What's the scariest encounter you've had with a total stranger? Story 1. I was at a co-worker's Halloween party. Someone I didn't know and won't name them at this point, but a young woman around 30 seconds, very beautiful, came up to me to bum a smoke, and I offered one, and we headed out to chat and smoke. Conversation was casual and we started to flirt. Things were going well and I asked if she was seeing anyone. She replies that she recently got out of a nightmare relationship. Her husband would regularly threaten to blow his brains out with an empty revolver in front of her and her children. It got to a point where it was every weekend. One weekend she sent her kids to stay at their grandparents and she had sneaked a bullet into his revolver without him knowing it. The same routine built up again and he started clicking through the chambers until the last one. She made a gun with her hand and put it to her temple and went pow. The fucker's dead. I didn't realize I hadn't taken a drag the whole time I was listening. I quickly said goodnight and got the hell out of there. Never saw her again. Hope her kids are okay. Story 2. I was wasted with a friend at a rock show. She had took off her top at a rock show. She is a really good friend. I decided she probably needed to chill, so we went out to my truck so she could just calm down and pass out. I knew I couldn't drive and was terrified of getting a Dewey for just being in the driver's seat, so I left my doors unlocked and threw my keys in the back seat. She lays her head in my lap and almost instantly falls asleep. I lean my seat back a bit and close my eyes, trying to control my spinnis. Next thing I know, both truck doors open up and I hear a guy say, "Let's rape her. She wants it." There were 3 guys, and 2 guys were grabbing her belt loops from the passenger side trying to tug her out. I punch at them, missing horribly. The other was trying to pull me out from the driver's side. I managed to get the passenger door closed, and I lock it. At this point, I knew if I got out of the truck, I'd fall right on my face. I was absolutely hammered. I started telling and cussing and trying to sound big, using my booming voice. I totally lucked out. Either they didn't like the attention I was causing, or I seemed enough of a threat. It was hard to tell her what almost happened to her, but she needed to know. Years later, she was married with kids, and I was invited out to a family gathering. Her whole family was there. I had no idea she had shared that story with her family. Her mother and Fader took me aside to talk to me and said she always refers to me as her hero when she would tell stories that I was involved. They were so thankful I was there. I think about this story all the time, especially when I feel worthless. It was too real, it changed my life, and I always worry about people traveling alone. Story 3. In 2018 I was in Bari, southern Italy, for an Erasmus program. So, most warm Tuesday nights, we would go out to a bar called the Moderat, because they had beer pong tournaments. One night a friend of mine and I decided to take our guitars so that we could all have a great time singing with everybody and whatnot. So at the beginning, all our friends gather around, and Italian students also. It was turning out to be an awesome time. But 30 or so minutes into this, 2 big men with black leather jackets accompanied by 2 gorgeous women approach our group. They start demanding that we play some Italian songs that, obviously me and my friend had absolutely no f***ing idea about, so we try to explain them that. Even though they understood us, they did not care. They were getting more and more nervous and furious as the crowd started moving away. And 5 to 10 minutes later it was just them 2 trying to impress what I hope were their dates, my friend and I. We ended up overhearing some conversations that led us to think they were some sort of mafia guys that had business with that bar. So, even though the fact that they might have been mafia doesn't mean they were going to do anything to us, it didn't help at all either. So at some point one of the guys hands me his phone so that I can try and recognize some song he's got up on YouTube. I quickly pick up it was a simple chord progression. And as soon as me and my friend started playing that, they got all happy and started singing the lyrics and dancing with their dates. They got so happy they went into the bar and brought out a round of shots for all 6 of us. At that moment my friend and I look at each other like I hope this is tequila, cause we know damn well we can't refuse it. So we drank it, hugged it out and they left with a smile on their faces. We shat ourselves for a moment there. Story 4. My friend and I were drunk at 1 a.m. getting some pizza across from the bar after it closed. While we waited, my friend said she needed to step outside and not to follow her because she'll be right back. She was a super independent and badass woman for sure, but I never leave my friends alone at night, especially when we've been drinking. She walked out and I followed a minute afterward feeling uncomfortable. I didn't see her at first so I walked around behind the building and saw her crouched behind a dumpster vomiting. At the same time, I saw a grown-ass man walking up to her hurriedly. I yelled out leave us alone and he kept coming forward, saying haha hey you guys are just really cute, what's up? And I yelled no I'm telling you to fuck off very aggressively, standing square-shouldered in front of my friend. He switched directions and left. I was super disturbed that she may have been attacked if I had waited any longer to follow her outside. What the fuck was a guy doing speed walking at 1 a.m. toward a vulnerable girl behind a dumpster coming to chat? Stay safe y'all. Story 5. I was about 15 minutes 16 and in a Starbucks doing homework. I took my earbuds out to take a break and write some short stories. I don't know how it started, but this weird old man began talking to me. I'm way too polite to ignore people, so I talked with him. He had the teeth of a smoker and looked like a killer from Criminal Minds. Blue jeans, short gray hair, Caucasian, and a red shirt. Maybe he was in his 50 seconds, I'm not sure. I don't think he ordered anything. He was so casual talking to me and I was trying to tell him I had homework, but it didn't really stop him. Eventually I couldn't tolerate his vibes and discreetly told my friend who just got on her shift that the man was creeping me out. He even offered me a ride home. I lied and told him I had a ride and walked home, turning to see if he was following me. Thankfully, I didn't see him leave the store and drive off, and the way I walked was against traffic. I kept my dad on the phone and told him what happened. I never saw that guy again, thank God. I also didn't hear about any girls getting kidnapped either, so another plus. Story 6. Maybe just creepy and not scary. I was about 20 at the time. I'm 35 now, so just remembering the basics. I'm at a gas station in a fairly busy area and my car is at the pump. A truck drives in and stops in the middle of the pump area so that his driver's side is a few feet away from me. He leans over from the driver's seat to pop the passenger door open and says something like, "Hey, can you help me out?" I responded by raising my eyebrows and wait for him to tell me what he needs. He says, "See mirror," and I think I took a step or two closer. I'm still about 4 feet from the passenger side. He tells me that he hurt his back but dropped his cell phone in the floor, motions to the passenger side. "Can I look and get it?" I sort of craned my neck to see, bent to look but didn't come any closer. He tell me, "You're not going to be able to get it from there. I think it slid toward the backseat." I get a little closer but still about 2 feet from the truck. The truck is extended cab but 2-door. He tell me to push the seat forward and look. He is still being pretty friendly at this point, but alarm bells are starting to go. I can see pretty clearly under the seat of the truck from where I'm standing, and it seems like I would see a phone if it was there. I'll pull my phone out and say, "Tell me your number so I can call the phone and maybe we can pinpoint where it is. I don't want to dig around in your truck." His attitude changed and he kinda snapped at me to just climb in here, and look, I'm also seeing how much he is leaning over the passenger seat. He's moving around pretty good for someone who needed my help. He pushed forward himself. Was it broken that the button didn't need to be pushed? "You're going to have to look up under the back of the seat. You need to climb in here." He's motioning for me to come into the truck and I tell him, "Yo, I'm not getting in your truck. If you want to give me your number." I start to back up. I had gotten pretty close. He responded angrily, although I don't remember what he said. Reached all the way across this truck again to slam the passenger door shut and took off. Wish I had paid attention to the tag and called the police. The more I think about it, the more it bothers me. He obviously didn't need my help. He would have pulled into a parking spot and looked himself. His back isn't too hurt to drive. He was alone, so he got in the truck by himself and was planning to get out at some point. He could have asked someone else to help him. He could have given me the number to see if it would help us find the supposed cell phone in the empty floor. I think what stuck with me the most is that he was young with a nice, new vehicle, clean cut and very good looking. I can see how he could easily get a less suspicious person in a vulnerable situation. Story 7. So at my last job we didn't have a break room, but there were a couple more secluded tables that most of us would go eat at. I was out there alone save for this one older looking man who came over to ask me a question. This was quite a while ago, so I don't remember exactly what he asked. But he did start rambling about how he used to shoot up with bands I never heard of. I was going to just be polite and let him finish his story. But then he moved closer to block me from leaving. I jumped over the back of the booth and ran into the kitchen. I told my manager about it, but he wasn't out there when she went out to check. Cut to a few hours later, I'm getting ready to go home, and the night manager asks me to wipe down the tables real quick before I go. I tell him about the man and how even if he was supposedly gone, I wasn't comfortable being out there. He just sends me home and sends someone else to do it. I find out the next day that they had to call the cops because he had been shooting up in the men's room, and I guess he pissed all over it and passed out. I never saw him again, and it wasn't until they closed the dining area for COVID that I was comfortable sitting out there by myself again. Story 8. Some of the details are blurry to me because it happened such a long time ago, but when I was around 6-7 I lived in a ghetto with my family. There was this pound that they stocked with trout and I loved fishing. I constantly asked my dad to talk me fishing, but it was either he was too busy, tired, or didn't feel like it. So me being a little kid decided it would be alright if I went up to the road to just do a little fishing. I grabbed my fishing pole with some bait and just walked up there. Now there was usually a good bit of people around, but I noticed that there was only like 2-3 families there and this well-dressed white dude who looked way out of place for the part of town we was in. I didn't think too much of it being so long. Just set up my pole and started fishing, but I kept feeling like there was somebody watching me. Just kept trying to ignore it and do my fishing. Did take a peek around and noticed the nicely dressed white dude was walking over to me and that a black dad kept giving me glances. Then when I wasn't paying attention, I felt a tap on my shoulder and it was white dude. He was probably around his mid to late 20s and tried talking to me. Said, "Hey kid, is your family around or are you lost?" I just shook my head and said, "No, I'm not lost." He said, "Alright, I just wanted to make sure you're okay. Hey, I know a great little fishing spot over here." Then he grabbed my arm and tried leading me over to this little forested part of the area that has a bridge which you can kinda walk and fish under. I got really nervous and didn't know what to do, but for some reason I just looked over to the black dad and said, "Uncle Ricky, this man is scaring me." And as soon as I said that, the dad was halfway over to me and that white dude was booking it to his car. The dad, who I wish I could remember his name, asked if I was okay, if he touched or hurt me anywhere, and where my parents are at. I said I was okay and that my parents are at home. That I lived right down the street and I just wanted to go home. He helped me grab my little tackle box and my fishing pole, then him and his family walked me to the middle of the street. Told me to tell my parents what happened but thanked him for helping me home and with the scary man. Then shortly after got yelled at and grounded my parents. I'm gonna be 22 on the 27th but can remember some parts of what happened like it was yesterday. And that dad's face, I really hope he's doing alright. Story 9. I was 14, and I was at my little brother's basketball game at a local high school that was across the street from a pretty large shopping center. I was not very interested in watching 7-year-olds playing basketball, so I asked my mom if I could go across the street to the Kohl's to see if they had any Star Wars action figures. I was very into collecting Star Wars figures. She said yes, and I quickly walked across the street. But there was no crosswalk within a good distance of me, so I decided to jaywalk it. There was a pretty large median separating directions of traffic that I was able to stop on while I waited for cars to pass. This is all important later. At this point I should also mention that at this time in my life I was overweight. Not obese, but definitely on the chubby side, and I was very insecure about it. I also had a short haircut. When I was about 19 I finally started losing the weight, and I also started growing my hair longer. Anyways, long story short, back then I was a lot chubbier than I am now. So, I'm walking back from Kohl's, after having found not a single action figure, and I decide to jaywalk back to the high school. I run across one half of the street, stopping on the median dividing the street again, when out of nowhere a stranger, a little taller than me, thin, long brown hair, is right behind me on this median. He comes up to me and says, "Hey, man. How's it going?" I say I'm doing fine. He says, "Awesome, man. Well, I just needed to let you know that I'm you from the future." I honestly don't remember how I responded to that. I was just looking around, still trying to figure out where he had come from. But he keeps talking and says, "I just wanted to come find you and let you know that no matter what it looks like now, everything's gonna be okay." I was so weirded out, and if I'm being honest, too insecure to question him about any of these claims. I think I probably just said, "Okay, cool." I then walked across the other half of the street, and when I'm on the other side, I look back to see if he followed me. No joke, there was no sign of him. The strange part is, at the time I was like, that guy must have just been crazy or something, because he looked nothing like me other than the fact that he was white and had brown hair, but he was wearing pretty nice clothes and didn't look like he was tweaking on anything. Only thing is, as I get older, I feel like I've started to look more and more like this random dude who claimed to be me from the future. Longer hair, skinnier frame, a little taller. It's strange, man. Probably just a random encounter with a strange person. But if I ever discover the secret to time travel, I know exactly where and when I'm going and what I'm gonna say to my past self. Story 10. My wife was in the end of her pregnancy and forgot her phone at her work. Now, as she had a hard time walking, I got the keys and passcode to enter the building. It was Friday evening around 17. So I enter, and from inside the floor I have to go though the cafeteria section to get to her room. There in the dark sat a dark-skinned man dresses in a dark blue sweater and black pants, who suddenly raised up and started to talk to me. That to me coming from the light, he literally popped into my view right in front of me 3 feet from me. He then leans in starting to ask questions. So I extends my hand and say, "Hello, I'm 20, who are you?" He answers Seth in a raspy voice. I said I was in a hurry and asked what he was doing in the dark. He said waiting for NN. I looked surprised and say, "Well, I know she went home hours ago. You should come back on Monday. I need to fetch a paper on my room, but do you want me to call her?" He said no, and walks out the door. I lock the door and pick up the phone and lock up after me. I was shaking on my way back to the car. Got home, told my wife that, picked up the phone and called the region manager, who took it serious enough that they switched out a lot of locks, as they knew who this Seth guy was and he had been a contractor before but should have handed back all the keys before. Made me think a lot of security, and understand how afraid some girls can be from spooky men. I took a judgment call to approach and it paid off, but I'm getting skittish thinking if my wife had entered, what would have happened. Please drop down your stories in the comments. I would love to make videos on them too. And also don't forget to like and subscribe.